Alright, so this video hopefully won't be too long, but we're going to, graph something without a calculator, practice that, and we're going to talk about increase or decrease. So where you need to be careful is when we're talking about intervals of increase and decrease, that just means I want you to imagine that a bird is flying, and we always read it from left to right. So there's a bird right here, and it's going to fly. So what's happening? The bird is going up and up and up and up and up and up until right here. And then the bird's going to start going down and down and down and down. Right? So you can think of it like that. You could think like, where's the slope positive versus negative? You could think of it like that. But when you do intervals of increase, decrease, you always use x values to state those intervals. So you could say the slope is positive between A and B, and the slope is negative between B and C. In this case, our vertex is a maximum. So if you're going to graph something in standard form without a calculator, it's really important that you have the vertex. You can't do anything without that. So if I'm going to use my H formula, opposite of B over 2A, I'm going to get 1. I would take that 1, I'd plug it back in for X and compute all that out. So I'd end up getting 3 minus 6 plus 1, which is negative 2. I also know that my A value is 3, so I know there's a stretch of 3. And because it's in standard form, I know that the y-intercept is 1. And because the y-intercept isn't so big, I'm going to go ahead and graph it. If it was like 100, obviously I'm not going to graph that, but we can handle 1. So I'm going to graph my vertex, so h comma k, which is 1, negative 2. We're going to graph the y-intercept of 1. And the good news is, you know, everything is symmetric around the vertex. So if I go up and to the right, I will have another point that's on the parabola. And then I connect it as best I can. All right, so if I ask you where is the slope positive, that's the same as saying where does it increase. So it's actually going to increase between 1 and infinity. So it never stops being positive slope after that. Okay. Again, we want to use x values when describing intervals. We do not use y values. Okay, so between 1, okay, so between the value of 1 and infinity, we see a positive slope. The reason we're using a parenthesis is because at 1, it's not decreasing or increasing, it's just flat. So at 1, there's actually nothing going on here. It's immediately after 1 it starts going up. So we don't want to include 1 as an answer. So the slope would be negative between the left forever and 1 again. Right? But again, don't use a bracket with 1 because it's not actually going down at 1, it's just flat. What we can't do is we cannot mix intervals of increase and decrease up with our domain. Alright, so what's the furthest point to the left versus the furthest point to the right? There is none, so there's both infinities. Right, in terms of height, what's the lowest point? Negative 2. And that is a point that's included as an answer. So negative 2 is on the graph, and it goes up and up. Right? So you're going to be able to tell me the vertex is at 1, negative 2. And you also should be able to tell me the axis of symmetry is x equals 1. So we want you to be able to get all that information just from this standard form right here. Alright, so we're going to practice that increase-decrease thing. Alright, so the slope is positive. It looks like the slope is positive over here, right until this point. So that would be negative infinity to negative 3. Alright, so that's positive. And then we have a negative slope between negative 3 and 1. And then our slope is positive again from 1 to 4. After that, the slope is neither positive nor negative. If I look at the next graph, I see lots of changes going on. So I see lots of times where it's negative and lots of times where the slope is positive. So I'm going to do all the positives first. So I see it going uphill between negative 17 and negative 6. It's also positive slope between 4 and 9, and the slope is positive after 13. So that means anything in between would be decreasing. So the slope is negative from the far left up until negative 17. It's negative between negative 6 and 4. And it's also negative between 9 and 13. we have a reciprocal function down here, and I want you to think about what's going on. So if I asked you what's going on with the slope right here, it is gradually going downhill. All right, so, or you can think of it like the bird starts flying here, the bird is going to continue flying downhill. So this side is decreasing. What happens then is, let's say, oh, the bird went too far down and he hit a rock and now he's out for the count. So a new bird is going to pick up where the old bird left off, and okay, what's he doing? So he picks up right here. He is still decreasing his height as time goes on. So we actually decreased the whole time from negative infinity up until 0 when we had to stop, and then it picked up immediately after 0 and it kept decreasing again. It's a little bit different here. All right, so you can see this is going uphill from left to right, right? Or the bird would be flying higher and higher and higher until 0. So this actually has an increase from negative infinity to 0 and a decrease from 0 to infinity. So again, if the bird starts on the other side of 0 and flies, as time goes on, the bird's going to get lower and lower. So because of that, that makes it a decrease.